The fire in the hearth had burned low hours ago. But Isla Orwell stood at the window of the farmhouse bedroom she had shared with her husband for 3 months now, watching the moonlight spill across the fields and feeling her heart hammering against her ribs with a mixture of anticipation and determination that made her whole body feel warm despite the autumn chill creeping through the glass. She had been patient, had given Isaac Oakes the space he seemed to need, had waited through their courtship and even through their wedding day when he had looked at her with such tenderness, but also such careful restraint. And she had told herself that he was simply being respectful, that he wanted her to feel safe and cherished. But 3 months of separate beds and chaste kisses goodnight had stretched her patience to its absolute breaking point. Behind her, she heard the soft creak of floorboards in the hallway, the sound of Isaac making his way to what had become his room, the smaller bedroom at the far end of the house that he had moved into the very night they had returned from their wedding ceremony in the village. Isla turned from the window, her green skin catching the moonlight, her tusks gleaming white as she set her jaw with resolve. She was an orc woman, raised in the borderlands between human settlements and orc territories, and her mother had taught her that when something mattered, when someone mattered, you fought for it with everything you had. The hallway was dark when she stepped into it, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor, and she could see the thin line of candlelight beneath Isaac's door. Her hand trembled only slightly as she raised it to knock, but then she thought better of it and simply turned the handle, pushing the door open to find her husband sitting on the edge of his narrow bed, still fully dressed in his work clothes, his head in his hands. He looked up sharply when the door opened, his brown eyes going wide with surprise, and Isla saw the way his gaze traveled over her, taking in the simple white nightgown she wore, the way her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual practical braid. Isaac was a handsome man by human standards. She knew, tall and broad-shouldered from years of working his family's farm, with sun-weathered skin and strong hands that she had watched countless times as he worked the fields or repaired fences or gentled the horses in the barn. "Isla," he said, and his voice was rough with something she could not quite name. "Is something wrong? Are you unwell?" She stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind her with a soft click that sounded very loud in the quiet of the night. "I am perfectly well," she said, and she was pleased that her voice came out steady and clear. "But I have something I need to say to you, Isaac, and I need you to listen to me without interrupting." He stood up slowly, and she could see the wariness in his expression, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides as though he was bracing himself for bad news. "All right," he said quietly. "I am listening." Isla took a deep breath, drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed. "I have been patient," she began, taking a step closer to him. "I have waited because I thought you needed time, that you were being considerate of my feelings, that perhaps human customs required this kind of restraint. But Isaac, I have to tell you that I cannot wait any longer. I have waited long enough to be your wife." She saw the way color flooded his face, saw the way he swallowed hard and looked away from her as though he could not bear to meet her eyes. "Isla, you are my wife," he said, but his voice was strained. "We were married in front of the whole village. Everyone knows that you are mine and I am yours." "Everyone knows we spoke vows," Isla corrected, taking another step toward him so that she was close enough now to catch the scent of him, earth and hay and the soap he used to wash with. "But Isaac, you treat me like a sister or a friend, not like a wife. You kiss my forehead when you leave in the morning. You thank me for meals as though I am a housekeeper. You sleep in this tiny room while I lie alone in the bed we are supposed to share, and I do not understand what I have done wrong or what you are so afraid of." "You have done nothing wrong," Isaac said quickly, and now he did look at her, his eyes fierce with emotion. "Isla, you have been perfect. You have been everything I could have hoped for and more, and that is exactly the problem." She frowned, her pointed ears tilting slightly with her confusion. "I do not understand how my being a good wife is a problem." Isaac ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had learned meant he was frustrated or uncertain. "You are a good wife," he agreed. "But Isla, I see the way people look at us in the village. I hear what they say when they think I am not listening. They call you my orc whore. They say I have dishonored myself and my family by marrying you. They say that I am keeping you as some kind of exotic pet, that there is no way I could truly love you, that this is all just some kind of perverse fascination." The words hit Isla like physical blows, and she felt her tusks press against her lower lip as she clenched her jaw against the hurt. She had known, of course, that not everyone in the village approved of their marriage, but she had not realized the extent of the cruel gossip, had not understood that Isaac was bearing the weight of it all while trying to shield her from the worst of it. "And so you keep me at a distance," she said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. "You think that if you do not consummate our marriage, if you do not truly make me your wife in every sense, then somehow it will hurt less when they say these things. Or perhaps you think it will make the gossip less vicious." "I think," Isaac said, and his voice was raw with pain, "that if I give in to what I want, if I allow myself to love you the way I desperately wish to love you, then when you realize what a mistake this was, when you understand what you have given up by marrying a human farmer who can offer you nothing but hard work and social exile, it will destroy me completely." Isla stared at him, feeling her heart crack open at the anguish in his words, at the realization that this man she had fallen in love with had been protecting himself from what he saw as inevitable heartbreak. She closed the remaining distance between them in 2 quick strides and reached up to cup his face in her hands, forcing him to look down at her, to see the truth in her eyes. "Isaac Oakes," she said fiercely, "I am an orc woman who was cast out of her clan for the crime of showing mercy to a wounded human soldier. I have been spat upon, called a traitor to my people, and told that I am a disgrace to my ancestors. I gave up everything I knew, everyone I loved, because I believed that there had to be a better way than the endless cycle of violence and hatred between our peoples. And when I met you, when you looked at me not with fear or disgust but with kindness and respect, I knew that I had been right to hope. I chose you, Isaac. I chose this life with full knowledge of what it would cost me, and I would choose it again, every single time." She felt the shudder that ran through him, saw the way his eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "But what if I fail you?" he whispered. "What if I cannot give you the life you deserve? What if I am not strong enough to withstand the hatred and the prejudice?" "Then we will fail together," Isla said simply. "And we will get back up together and we will keep going together because that is what married people do. But Isaac, I cannot be your wife in name only. I cannot live in this house with you, sleep in a separate bed, and pretend that my heart does not ache every time you pull away from me. I have waited long enough to be your wife in truth, and I will not wait any longer." For a long moment, Isaac simply stared at her, and Isla could see the war being waged behind his eyes, could see the fear and desire and love all tangled together in a knot he had been trying so hard not to untangle. Then, with a sound that was half laugh and half sob, he pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her waist as he buried his face against her neck. "I am so sorry," he murmured against her skin, and she felt the warmth of his breath, the trembling in his strong frame. "I am so sorry, Isla. I have been a coward and a fool, and I have hurt you when all I wanted was to protect us both." Isla wrapped her arms around him, holding him close, feeling the way their bodies fit together as though they had been made for this very purpose. "You are not a coward," she said softly. "You are a man who has been wounded by cruelty and fear, and I understand that wounds take time to heal. But Isaac, I need you to trust me. I need you to trust that I know my own mind and my own heart. I need you to believe that when I say I love you, I mean it with every fiber of my being." He pulled back just enough to look at her, and she saw that tears were indeed tracking down his cheeks. "I do love you," he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "God help me, Isla. I have loved you since the first day you came to this farm looking for work, with your head held high despite the bruises on your face and the fear in your eyes. I have loved you through every shared meal and every conversation by the fire, and every moment I have watched you prove everyone wrong about what an orc can be. I love you so much it terrifies me." Isla felt her own eyes fill with tears, felt the joy and relief and love swelling in her chest until she thought she might burst from it. "Then show me," she whispered, rising up on her toes to press her forehead against his. "Please, Isaac, I have waited long enough. Show me that you love me." She felt the change in him, felt the moment when the dam finally broke, and all the restraint he had been holding onto so desperately simply crumbled away. His hands came up to cradle her face, his thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks, and then he was kissing her with a passion and hunger that made her knees go weak. This was nothing like the chaste pecks he had given her before, nothing like the careful, controlled affection he had doled out in careful measures. This was raw and honest, and everything she had been craving. Isla kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even though there was no space left between them. She felt his hands slide down to her waist, felt the way they trembled slightly as they settled on the curve of her hips, and she made a soft sound of encouragement against his mouth. "Isla," he breathed when they finally broke apart for air, and his voice was rough with desire. "Are you certain? Because once we cross this threshold, once I truly make you my wife, there will be no going back for me. You will have all of me, every broken, imperfect piece, and I do not know if I will ever be able to let you go." She smiled up at him, and she knew that her tusks were showing, knew that she probably looked fierce and strange by human standards, but Isaac was looking at her as though she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I do not want you to let me go," she said. "I want you to hold on to me as tightly as you can, for as long as we both shall live. That is what I vowed on our wedding day, and that is what I meant with every word." Isaac's answering smile was radiant, transforming his face from handsome to beautiful, and Isla felt her breath catch at the sight of it. "Then I suppose I should carry my bride to bed properly," he said, and before she could respond, he had swept her up into his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. She laughed, the sound bright and surprised in the quiet room, and wrapped her arms around his neck as he carried her out into the hallway and toward the larger bedroom, the one that should have been theirs from the beginning. The door was still open from when she had left it, and moonlight streamed through the window, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. Isaac set her down gently on the bed, and then he was beside her, his hands gentle but sure as they traced the lines of her face, her shoulders, her arms. "You are so beautiful," he murmured, and Isla could hear the wonder in his voice. "I have thought so from the very beginning, but I never dared to say it. I was afraid you would think I was lying or trying to manipulate you." "I would have known if you were lying," Isla said, reaching up to touch his face in turn, learning the shape of his jaw, the curve of his lips. "Orcs are taught to read body language and scent from a young age. It is how we survive. And Isaac, I have always been able to tell that you found me attractive, even when you were trying so hard to keep your distance. It was part of what made the waiting so difficult. He groaned softly, closing his eyes as though in pain. "I am such a fool," he said. "I have wasted so much time being afraid when I could have been loving you." "Then do not waste any more," Isla said, and she pulled him down to her, capturing his lips in another kiss that quickly deepened into something urgent and consuming. What followed was a revelation, a slow and tender exploration that was everything Isla had dreamed of and more. Isaac was patient and attentive, constantly checking to make sure she was comfortable, that he was not being too rough or moving too fast. Isla appreciated his care, but she also wanted him to know that she was not fragile, that orc women were strong and passionate and capable of matching their partners in every way. When she told him as much, when she showed him with her own hands and lips and body that she wanted him with the same fierce desire he clearly felt for her, Isaac responded with a groan of relief and surrender. The careful control he had been maintaining slipped away, replaced by a raw honesty that made Isla feel more cherished and desired than she had ever thought possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight, both of them breathing hard, their skin damp with sweat and their hearts still racing. Isaac had his arms around her, holding her close against his chest, and Isla could hear the steady thump of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you, Isla, and I am sorry I made you wait so long to hear it properly." "I love you too," Isla replied, pressing a kiss to his collarbone. "And I am not sorry I pushed you tonight. Sometimes the things most worth having are the things we have to fight for." She felt him chuckle, the sound rumbling through his chest. "You definitely fought for this," he agreed. "You were magnificent, coming into my room and telling me exactly what you wanted." "I stood no chance against your determination." Isla smiled against his skin. "I am an orc woman," she said with quiet pride. "We do not give up on the things we love." They lay in comfortable silence for a while, simply holding each other and listening to the sounds of the night outside the window. Isla felt utterly content, as though some fundamental piece of herself that had been missing had finally clicked into place. This was what marriage was supposed to be, she thought. Not just vows spoken in public or names written in a register, but this intimacy and trust and vulnerability shared between two people who had chosen each other against all odds. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked softly, and Isla realized that he had been watching her face in the moonlight. "I am thinking that I am happy," she said honestly. "Happier than I have been in a very long time, perhaps happier than I have ever been. I am thinking that no matter what anyone in the village says, no matter how difficult things might become, I will never regret choosing you." Isaac's arms tightened around her. "I am thinking the same thing," he admitted. "And I am also thinking that I have been letting fear and shame dictate my actions for too long. Tomorrow, when we go into the village for the market, I am going to hold your hand in public. I am going to introduce you as my wife to anyone who will listen. I am going to stop acting as though our marriage is something to be ashamed of and start showing the world that you are the best thing that has ever happened to me." Isla felt warmth bloom in her chest at his words, but she also felt a flicker of concern. "Isaac, I do not need grand gestures or public declarations," she said carefully. "I know that standing up to the prejudice we face could make things harder for you, could cost you friendships or business opportunities. I do not want you to feel pressured to prove anything to me." "It is not about proving anything to you," Isaac said firmly. "It is about proving something to myself. It is about being the man you deserve, the husband who stands beside you proudly instead of hiding in the shadows and pretending that what we have is somehow shameful or wrong. You were brave enough to come to me tonight and demand what you deserved." The least I can do is be brave enough to claim you publicly as mine." Isla felt tears prick at her eyes again, but these were tears of joy rather than hurt. "Very well," she whispered. "But know that I will be beside you every step of the way, and if anyone says anything cruel or unkind, I will not hesitate to defend you with words or fists, whichever seems more appropriate." Isaac laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "I have no doubt of that," he said. "You are fierce and strong and absolutely terrifying when you want to be. It is one of the many things I love about you." They talked for hours after that, sharing stories and secrets and dreams for the future. Isaac told her about his childhood on the farm, about the parents he had lost to illness 5 years ago, about his struggles to keep the land productive and profitable on his own. Isla told him about growing up in an orc clan that valued strength and loyalty above all else, about the human soldier she had found bleeding in the forest, and the choice she had made to bandage his wounds instead of finishing him off, about the exile that had followed when her clan discovered what she had done. "Do you ever regret it?" Isaac asked quietly. "Saving that soldier, even though it cost you everything you knew?" Isla considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I grieve for what I lost," she admitted. "I miss my mother and my younger siblings. I miss the traditions and the songs and the feeling of belonging somewhere. But do I regret the choice itself? No. I could not live with myself if I had killed an unarmed, wounded man simply because he was born human. That soldier had done nothing to me or my clan. He was just a young man who had been conscripted into a war he probably did not even understand. How could I justify ending his life? Most people would say you should have killed him because he was the enemy," Isaac pointed out. "That is certainly what the humans in the village believe about orcs. They see your people as monsters who need to be destroyed, not as individuals with their own thoughts and feelings." "Then most people are wrong," Isla said flatly. "On both sides. The humans who think all orcs are monsters are just as blind as the orcs who think all humans are weak and treacherous. We are all just people trying to survive in a world that seems determined to pit us against each other." Isaac pressed a kiss to her forehead. "You are wise beyond your years," he murmured, "and you give me hope that maybe, someday, others will see what you see. That maybe our marriage is not just about us, but about proving that love can bridge even the deepest divides. That is a heavy burden to place on two people who just want to be happy together," Isla said with a slight smile. "But I suppose if anyone can bear it, we can." As the night wore on and exhaustion finally began to claim them both, Isla felt herself drifting toward sleep, still wrapped securely in Isaac's arms. Just before she slipped under completely, she felt him whisper against her hair, so softly she almost missed it. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. "Thank you for being brave enough to demand what you deserved. Thank you for loving me even when I was too afraid to love you properly in return." Isla smiled into the darkness, already more asleep than awake. "Always," she murmured. "I will always fight for us." When Isla woke the next morning, the sun was streaming through the window and the bed beside her was empty. For a moment, panic flared in her chest, the irrational fear that perhaps the previous night had been a dream or that Isaac had woken filled with regret and fled to his old room. But then she heard sounds from downstairs, the clatter of pots and the smell of something cooking, and she realized that her husband was simply making breakfast. She rose and dressed quickly, braiding her hair in the practical style she preferred for daily work, and made her way downstairs to find Isaac standing at the stove, focusing intently on a pan of eggs. He looked up when he heard her footsteps and smiled, the expression so open and warm that Isla felt her heart flutter in her chest. "Good morning, wife," he said, and there was something different about the way he said it now, a possessive pride that had been absent before. "I thought I would make us breakfast before we head to the market." "You should have woken me," Isla said, crossing to him and rising up on her toes to kiss his cheek. "I am usually the one who cooks in the mornings." "I wanted to do something nice for you," Isaac said, and she could see a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "After last night, after everything you said and did, I wanted you to know that I appreciate you, that I see all the ways you take care of me and this household." Isla felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. "I take care of you because I love you," she said simply. "Not because I expect anything in return, but I will admit, it is nice to be appreciated." They ate together at the small kitchen table, their knees bumping beneath the surface, their fingers occasionally brushing as they reached for the same serving dish. It felt different from all the other meals they had shared, Isla thought. There was an easiness between them now, an intimacy that went beyond simple companionship. After breakfast, they cleaned up together and then prepared to head into the village for the weekly market. Isla put on her nicest dress, a simple green cotton that Isaac had bought for her as a wedding gift, and tied a scarf around her neck to ward off the autumn chill. Isaac dressed in his good shirt and trousers, the ones he usually reserved for church or important business, and when Isla raised an eyebrow at the choice, he simply smiled. "I want to look my best when I walk through the village with my beautiful wife," he said, and Isla felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. The ride to the village was pleasant, the wagon rattling along the dirt road while the countryside stretched out around them in shades of gold and amber. Isaac had not been exaggerating about holding her hand, Isla realized. He kept one hand on the reins and the other laced through her fingers, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her palm. When they reached the village and Isaac pulled the wagon to a stop near the market square, Isla felt her stomach clench with nervousness. She had been to the village many times since marrying Isaac, but he had always been careful to maintain a certain distance in public, never touching her more than was strictly necessary, never looking at her with anything more than polite friendliness. She knew that his sudden change in behavior was going to draw attention and probably criticism. Isaac seemed to sense her apprehension because he squeezed her hand and leaned close to whisper in her ear. "We do not have to do this if you are not ready," he said quietly. "I meant what I said last night, but I do not want to make you uncomfortable." Isla straightened her spine and lifted her chin, channeling every ounce of the pride her orc mother had tried to instill in her. "I am ready," she said firmly. "Let them look. Let them talk. I am your wife, and I am not ashamed of that." Isaac's answering smile was brilliant, and then he was helping her down from the wagon, his hands strong and steady on her waist. Instead of immediately releasing her as he usually did, he laced his fingers through hers again and began walking toward the market stalls, keeping her close to his side. The reaction was immediate and impossible to miss. Heads turned, conversation stopped mid-sentence, and Isla could feel the weight of dozens of stares boring into them. She heard the whispers start almost immediately, the scandalized murmurs that followed in their wake like the tail of a comet. "Shameless," someone hissed, and Isla recognized the voice as belonging to Mistress Harrow, one of the village's most notorious gossips. Walking around in broad daylight as though their unnatural union is something to be proud of. Isaac's jaw tightened, but he did not slow his pace or release Isla's hand. Instead, he led her directly to the baker's stall, where old Mr. Brennan was arranging fresh loaves of bread. "Good morning, Mr. Brennan," Isaac said cheerfully, as though he had not heard the cruel whispers at all. "I would like to buy 2 of your finest loaves, please. My wife makes the most wonderful stew, and it deserves the best bread to go with it." Mr. Brennan, to his credit, simply nodded and selected 2 loaves without comment, though Isla could see the curiosity in his eyes as he glanced between them. "That will be 6 coppers," he said, and Isaac paid without releasing Isla's hand, managing the transaction one-handed with impressive dexterity. They moved on to the vegetable stall, where Isaac once again made a point of referring to Isla as his wife while purchasing carrots and turnips. Then to the butcher, where he bought a chicken and asked for the butcher's recommendation on how Isla should prepare it for the best flavor. With each interaction, Isla could feel her confidence growing. Isaac was not just holding her hand or making token acknowledgments of their relationship. He was actively, deliberately claiming her as his wife in front of the entire village, making it impossible for anyone to pretend that their marriage was anything less than real and binding. Not everyone was hostile, Isla was surprised to discover. A few of the vendors offered genuine smiles and kind words. The cheesemaker, a cheerful woman named Mistress Vale, even congratulated them and gave Isla an extra wedge of sharp cheddar as a gift. "I always thought Isaac needed someone strong to stand beside him," Mistress Vale said with a wink. "And you, my dear, look like you could wrestle a bear if you needed to. I approve." Isla found herself laughing despite her nervousness, charmed by the woman's blunt friendliness. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "That is very kind of you, but not everyone was as accepting as Mistress Vale." As they were preparing to head back to the wagon, a group of young men blocked their path, led by a sneering youth named Thomas, who Isaac had mentioned worked at the blacksmith shop. Well, Thomas drawled, looking Isla up and down with obvious disdain. "The orc bride has finally been let off her leash. Tell me, Oaks, does she sleep in the barn with the other animals, or have you actually brought the savage into your bed?" Isla felt rage flare hot in her chest, but before she could open her mouth to deliver a scathing response, Isaac stepped forward, placing himself partially between her and Thomas. "You will speak about my wife with respect," Isaac said, and his voice was low and dangerous in a way Isla had never heard before. "Or you will not speak to me at all. Is that clear?" Thomas's eyes widened slightly, clearly surprised by Isaac's vehemence, but he rallied quickly. "Wife," he scoffed. "Everyone knows that marriage is a sham, Oaks. You cannot actually expect us to believe that you have real feelings for that green-skinned monster." "What I expect," Isaac said coldly, "is for you to remember that you are speaking to a man who has known you since you were a boy, Thomas. I remember when you fell in the river and nearly drowned because you were showing off for the village girls. I remember who pulled you out and saved your life. Do you remember?" Thomas flushed, clearly caught off guard by the reminder. "That was different," he muttered. "That was before you lost your mind and married an orc." "The only thing that has changed," Isaac said, his voice carrying across the market square so that everyone nearby could hear, "is that I have finally found someone worth building a life with. Someone brave and kind and strong. Someone who sees me for who I am, not for what my family name might offer or how much land I own. And if that makes me mad in your eyes, Thomas, then I am proud to be mad." Isla felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely, refusing to show weakness in front of this hostile crowd. Isaac reached back without looking and found her hand, squeezing it gently before turning to address the gathering crowd. "I know many of you do not approve of my marriage," he said, his voice clear and steady. "I know you think I have made a mistake or dishonored myself somehow, but I want you all to understand something. Isla is my wife, legally and spiritually bound to me. She works harder than anyone I know. She has transformed my struggling farm into something profitable. She has brought laughter and warmth into a house that has been lonely and cold since my parents died. And most importantly, She has given me a reason to hope for the future instead of just surviving day to day." He paused, and Isla could see the emotion working in his throat. "So you can whisper behind your hands and call us names and make your cruel jokes, but nothing you say will change the fact that I love her, and I am proud to call her my wife. And if that means I am no longer welcome in this village, if it means I lose friends or business opportunities, then so be it. She is worth more to me than all of that combined." The silence that followed was deafening. Isla could see shock and anger and even grudging respect on various faces in the crowd. Then, from somewhere near the back, someone began to clap. Slowly, tentatively, others joined in until perhaps a third of the people gathered were applauding Isaac's speech. It was not everyone, Isla knew. It was not even a majority. But it was something, a sign that perhaps not every human in the village was determined to hate her simply for being born an orc. Thomas and his friends slunk away, clearly unwilling to continue the confrontation now that public opinion seemed at least partially against them. Isaac turned to Isla, his expression anxious, as though he was worried he had overstepped or embarrassed her. Instead, Isla pulled him close and kissed him right there in the middle of the market square in front of everyone. She heard gasps and a few scandalized shrieks, but she did not care. Her husband had stood up for her, had proclaimed his love for her publicly despite the cost, and she wanted everyone to know that she felt exactly the same way about him. When they finally broke apart, both of them slightly breathless, Isaac was grinning like a fool. "Was that appropriate public behavior for a married couple?" he asked, only half joking. "I have no idea," Isla admitted with a smile, "but I am not particularly concerned with propriety at the moment." They made their way back to the wagon amid stares and whispers, but Isla found that she did not mind them nearly as much as she had before. Let them stare, she thought. Let them see that we are not ashamed, that our love is real and strong and worth fighting for. The ride home was quiet, both of them processing what had just happened. When they finally pulled up to the farmhouse, Isaac helped her down from the wagon and then simply held her for a long moment, his face buried in her hair. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for being brave enough to stand beside me. Thank you for not being ashamed of me." Isla pulled back far enough to look him in the eyes. "Why would I ever be ashamed of you?" she asked, genuinely confused. "You are a good man, Isaac. An honest, hard-working, kind man who has shown me more respect and care than anyone else in my entire life. I am proud to be your wife." Isaac's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Even though I am just a poor farmer, even though I cannot give you fine clothes or jewels or a life of comfort." "I do not want fine clothes or jewels," Isla said firmly. "I want a partner who treats me as an equal. I want a home where I feel safe and valued. I want a husband who looks at me the way you do, as though I am precious and important. You have given me all of that and more, Isaac. What do I care about material wealth when I have something infinitely more valuable?" They spent the rest of the day working together on the farm, harvesting the last of the autumn vegetables and preparing the fields for the winter ahead. It was hard physical labor, but Isla found joy in it, in the rhythm of working alongside her husband, in the easy conversation and occasional laughter that punctuated their tasks. As the sun began to set and they made their way back to the house, both of them tired and dirty, Isaac caught her hand and pulled her to a stop. "I have been thinking," he said, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, "about what you said last night, about having waited long enough to be my wife." Isla felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she met his gaze steadily. "Yes. I was thinking that perhaps we have a lot of time to make up for," Isaac continued, his smile widening into a grin. 3 months worth of nights when we should have been sharing a bed, It seems to me that we have some catching up to do." Isla laughed, the sound bright and delighted. "I believe you are correct," she agreed, "though I should warn you that orc women have considerable stamina. You may find yourself overwhelmed." Isaac's eyes gleamed with mischief and desire. "I am willing to take that risk," he said, and then he was sweeping her up into his arms again, carrying her toward the house while she shrieked with surprised laughter. That night set the pattern for the weeks that followed. During the day, they worked the farm together, gradually preparing for the harsh winter that was approaching. In the evenings, they cooked and ate together, sharing stories and dreams and plans for the future. And at night, they explored this new intimacy between them, learning each other's bodies and desires with growing confidence and joy. The hostility from the village did not disappear overnight, but it did gradually begin to diminish. When they went to market the following week, fewer people openly glared at them. The week after that, several villagers actually nodded in greeting. Slowly, painfully slowly, some of the community began to accept that Isaac and Isla's marriage was not a temporary madness that would pass, but a genuine commitment that deserved at least grudging respect. There were still those who refused to acknowledge Isla as anything more than an animal, still those who muttered insults when they thought she could not hear. But there were also those who began to see her as an individual, who recognized her hard work and quiet dignity. Mistress Vale remained a staunch ally, often engaging Isla in conversation at the market and loudly praising her cheese-making skills to anyone who would listen. As autumn deepened into winter and the first snow began to fall, Isla found herself reflecting on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few short months. She had gone from being an exile with no home and no prospects to being a wife with a husband who loved her fiercely, and a farm that was beginning to feel like it truly belonged to her as much as to Isaac. One particularly cold evening, as they sat together by the fire after dinner, Isla suddenly realized that she had not told Isaac about the real reason she had been so insistent that night 3 months ago, the reason beyond simple desire or impatience. "Isaac," she said softly, and he looked up from the piece of leather he was mending, "there is something I need to tell you." His expression immediately became concerned. "What is it? Is something wrong?" Isla shook her head, smiling to reassure him. "No, nothing is wrong. But I realized that I never explained to you why I was so determined that we finally consummate our marriage when I did." Isaac set down his work, giving her his full attention. "I assumed it was because you were tired of waiting," he said, "and I could not blame you for that. I had been unreasonably stubborn and fearful." "That was part of it," Isla admitted, "but there was something else. In orc culture, a marriage is not considered truly valid until it has been consummated. I know human customs are different, that you consider the vows themselves to be binding. But for me, for my people, the physical union is what seals the commitment. And I needed that, Isaac. I needed to know that our marriage was real by both human and orc standards." Understanding dawned in Isaac's eyes. "You needed to know that you truly belonged here," he said slowly. "That you had a place and a home that could not be taken away from you." "Yes," Isla said, relieved that he understood. "I have lost so much, Isaac. My family, my clan, my entire culture and heritage. I needed to know that this, us, was something solid and permanent. Something that could not be undone or dismissed as a temporary arrangement." Isaac crossed the small distance between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her close against his chest. "You do belong here," he said fiercely. "You belong with me, and I belong with you, and nothing and no one will ever change that. I am sorry that I made you wait so long for that assurance. I am sorry that my fear nearly cost us both something precious." Isla nestled against him, breathing in his familiar scent. "We found our way to each other in the end," she said. "That is what matters. And Isaac, I want you to know that I do not regret any of it. Not the struggles or the painful moments or even the nights I spent alone wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. Because all of it led us here to this moment, and I cannot imagine being anywhere else." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, simply holding each other and listening to the crackle of the fire. Outside, the wind howled and snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. But inside, wrapped in her husband's arms, Isla felt warm and safe and utterly content. As winter deepened, and the farm work shifted to indoor tasks like repairing tools and mending clothes, Isla and Isaac found themselves with more time to simply be together. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, played simple card games by the fire, and slowly built a shared life that felt rich and meaningful despite its simplicity. Isaac taught Isla to read, patiently working through basic primers and then simple storybooks, until she could make her way through a page without his help. Isla taught Isaac some of the orc songs her mother had sung to her as a child, translating the words so he could understand the stories they told of ancient battles and great loves, and the enduring strength of family bonds. "Your people have such beautiful traditions," Isaac said one evening after Isla had finished teaching him a particularly complex ballad. "It seems such a waste that humans and orcs cannot find a way to coexist peacefully. Think of all we could learn from each other." "My clan would say that humans have nothing to teach orcs except weakness and treachery," Isla said sadly. "And most humans would say that orcs are too savage and brutish to learn anything of value. Both sides are wrong, but convincing them of that seems impossible." "Maybe it starts with people like us," Isaac suggested. "People willing to look past the prejudices and see the individual. Maybe if enough humans and orcs can find common ground, can build relationships and families together, eventually the hatred will fade." "That is a beautiful dream," Isla said wistfully. "But I fear it will take many generations to achieve if it can be achieved at all." "Then we will be the first generation," Isaac said firmly. "And maybe someday, when we have children of our own, they will grow up in a world that is a little bit kinder and more accepting than the one we inherited." The casual mention of children made Isla's breath catch. They had never discussed whether they wanted a family, had been so focused on simply building their relationship that the future had seemed too distant to contemplate. But hearing Isaac talk about their potential children as though it was a foregone conclusion filled her with a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "You want children?" she asked softly. "With me? Even though they would be half orc, even though they might face even more prejudice than I do?" Isaac looked at her as though she had asked something absurd. "Of course I want children with you," he said. "I want a house full of green-skinned, tusked children who have your strength and your courage and your beautiful heart. I want to teach them to work the land and to raid and to stand up for what is right even when it is difficult. And yes, I know they will face challenges because of their mixed heritage. But they will also have two parents who love them fiercely and who will fight for them every single day. That has to count for something." Isla felt tears streaming down her cheeks, but she was smiling so wide it almost hurt. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want to build a family with you, Isaac. I want to create something beautiful and strong that proves love is more powerful than hatred." Isaac wiped away her tears with his thumbs, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Then we will," he promised. "Maybe not today or tomorrow, but someday. When the time is right, we will bring new life into this world, and we will raise our children to be better than we were, to see past the divisions that have caused so much pain." That night, as they lay together in their bed, Isla felt a sense of peace and purpose settle over her like a warm blanket. She had spent so much of her life feeling adrift, caught between two worlds and fully belonging to neither. But here, in Isaac's arms, she had found her place. She had found her home. The winter months passed slowly but not unpleasantly. There were difficult days when the cold seemed to seep into their very bones, when food stores ran low, and the howling wind made even the sturdy farmhouse feel fragile. But there were also beautiful days when the sun sparkled on fresh snow, and they bundled up to go walking through the transformed landscape, marveling at how different everything looked in winter white. In late winter, when the snow was beginning to melt and the first hints of spring were appearing in the lengthening days, a stranger came to their door. He was an orc, tall and broad-shouldered with the traditional warrior braids and ceremonial scars that marked him as a clan leader. Isaac tensed when he opened the door to find the orc standing on their porch, but Isla recognized him immediately. "Uncle Grak," she breathed, shock and joy and fear all warring in her chest. "What are you doing here?" The orc's stern expression softened slightly when he saw her. "Isla," he rumbled in the orc tongue, his voice like distant thunder. "I have come a long way to speak with you, niece. May I enter?" Isla glanced at Isaac, who was watching the exchange with obvious confusion since he did not speak the orc language. She quickly translated the request, and though she could see the wariness in his eyes, Isaac stepped back and gestured for Grak to come inside. The orc had to duck to fit through the doorway, and he seemed to fill the entire kitchen with his presence. He looked around, taking in the clean, well-maintained space, the evidence of hard work and care that went into running the household. His gaze finally settled on Isaac, and Isla saw her uncle's eyes narrow as he assessed the human who had married his exiled niece. "Uncle Grak, this is my husband, Isaac Oakes," Isla said in the common tongue so both men could understand. "Isaac, this is my mother's brother, Grak Ironhide. He was one of the clan elders." "Was?" Isaac asked, catching the past tense. Grak nodded slowly. "I am no longer an elder of the Ironhide clan," he said, his common speech accented but clear. "I have been exiled just as Isla was, though for different reasons." Isla felt her heart sink. "What happened?" she asked. "What did you do?" "I argued that the clan was wrong to exile you," Grak said bluntly. "I said that showing mercy to an enemy was a sign of strength, not weakness. I said that blindly following tradition without considering whether those traditions still serve us is foolish." The clan chieftain did not appreciate my words. He gave me a choice: renounce my beliefs or leave. I left. Tears filled Isla's eyes at the thought of her uncle giving up everything to stand up for her, even though she had already been gone for over a year. "Uncle, you should not have done that," she said. "You had a life there, a position of respect and authority." "I had lies and hypocrisy," Grak corrected. "I could not continue to pretend that exiling you was just a right, not when I saw the courage it took to make the choice you made. So I left, and I have been traveling, trying to find you, wanting to see for myself that you are well and happy." "I am," Isla said, moving to stand beside Isaac and taking his hand. "I am very happy, Uncle. Isaac is a good man, and we have built a life together here." Grak's gaze moved between them, and Isla could see him noting their joined hands, the way they stood close together, the ease and comfort in their body language. "He treats you well?" Grak asked. "He does not abuse you or demean you. He treats me like a treasure," Isla said firmly. "He works beside me, he listens to me, he values my opinions and my contributions. He stood up to his entire village to defend me and claim me as his wife. I could not ask for a better husband." Grak nodded slowly, and then, to both Isla and Isaac's surprise, he turned to Isaac and spoke directly to him. You have taken on a great responsibility, human, he said. Isla is strong and brave, but she has been hurt deeply by her exile. She carries wounds that may never fully heal. Can you promise me that you will protect her, not just from external threats, but from the pain of feeling that she does not belong anywhere? Isaac met the orc's gaze steadily, showing no fear despite the fact that Grak could have snapped him like a twig if he chose to. I can promise you that I will spend every day of my life trying, Isaac said. I cannot undo the pain of her exile, and I cannot make the world suddenly accept our marriage or her presence in my community. But I can make sure she knows, every single day, that she is loved and valued and cherished. I can make sure she has a home here with me, a place where she is safe and free to be herself. And I can promise you that anyone who tries to hurt her will have to go through me first. A slow smile spread across Grak's face, transforming his stern features into something almost warm. You are small for a human, he observed, but you have the heart of a warrior. I think my niece has chosen well. The tension in the room eased and Isla felt relief wash over her. She had not realized how much she needed her uncle's approval, how much it had mattered to have at least one member of her family acknowledge that her choice to marry Isaac was valid and worthy of respect. Will you stay? She asked hopefully. At least for a few days. The spare room is small, but we could make it work. Grak shook his head regretfully. I cannot stay long, he said. I am heading north to the border territories where mixed communities are beginning to form. I have heard there are places where humans and orcs live side by side, where children of both races play together and merchants trade without fear of violence. I want to see these places for myself, to understand if peaceful coexistence is truly possible. It is possible, Isla said, gesturing to herself and Isaac. We are proof of that. You are proof that two individuals can find love across the divide, Grak corrected gently. But can entire communities do the same? That is what I need to learn. However, I would be grateful for a meal and a place to sleep tonight if the offer still stands. The roads have been long and lonely. Of course, Isaac said immediately. Any family of Isla's is welcome in our home. Please sit. We were just about to have dinner. What followed was one of the strangest and yet most wonderful evenings Isla could remember. She cooked a large meal while Isaac and Grak sat at the kitchen table and somewhat awkwardly at first attempted to make conversation. The language barrier made things difficult, as Grak's common speech was limited, and Isaac knew no orc tongue at all. But Isla translated when needed, and gradually, the two men found common ground. They talked about farming, discovering that orc agricultural techniques were quite different from human methods but equally effective in their own contexts. They talked about the coming spring and the work that would need to be done to prepare the fields. They even talked, tentatively, about the prejudices both had been taught about the other's race, and how meeting Isla had challenged those assumptions. I was taught that humans are weak and cowardly, Grak admitted as they ate. That you would always choose the easy path over the right one. But I have seen human soldiers fight with courage and honor. I have seen human healers risk their own lives to save strangers. And now, I see a human farmer who has opened his home and his heart to an exiled orc woman, despite the cost to himself. These things do not match what I was told. I was taught that orcs are mindless savages who live only for battle and blood, Isaac responded. That you have no concept of love or family or mercy. But Isla has shown me that orcs can be gentle and kind, that they value loyalty and honor and tradition. And now you tell me that you gave up your position in your clan to stand up for what you believed was right. That is not the action of a mindless savage. Grak raised his cup in a salute. Perhaps we have both been lied to, he suggested. Perhaps those in power on both sides benefit from keeping our peoples divided and fearful of each other. Perhaps, Isaac agreed, clinking his cup against Grax. But people like us, people willing to question those lies and seek out the truth, maybe we can start to change things. Isla watched the two men talking and felt her heart swell with love and hope. This was what the future could look like, she thought. Humans and orcs sitting together at a table, sharing food and stories and finding common ground. It was such a simple thing, and yet it felt revolutionary. That night, after Grack had retired to the spare room and Isaac and Isla were preparing for bed, Isaac pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "Your uncle is a good man," he said. "I can see where you get your strength and your courage." "He gave up everything for me," Isla said, still somewhat overwhelmed by the sacrifice her uncle had made. His home, his position, his entire life, all because he believed exiling me was wrong. "He did what family does," Isaac said simply. "He stood up for someone he loves, even when it was difficult and costly. It is the same thing you did when you saved that soldier, and it is the same thing I did when I defended you in the village. Love makes us brave, Isla. It makes us willing to fight for what matters." Isla nodded, blinking back tears. "I am so grateful for you," she whispered. "For this life we are building together. For the way you welcomed my uncle into our home without hesitation, even though he is an orc and could be dangerous." "He is not dangerous to us," Isaac said confidently. "He is family, and family is always welcome here. Besides, I think it is important for you to maintain connections to your orc heritage, even if you can never return to your clan. Grack represents a bridge between your past and your present, and that is valuable." They lay down together, wrapped in each other's arms, and Isla felt a deep sense of gratitude for the man she had married. He understood her in ways she had not thought possible, saw her needs and fears and addressed them with such care and thoughtfulness. In the morning, Grack prepared to continue his journey north. Before he left, he pulled Isla aside and spoke to her privately in the orc tongue. "You have found something rare and precious," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Hold on to it with everything you have. Do not let the prejudices of others poison what you have built. And Isla, know that you are not alone. There are others like you, other orcs who have chosen a different path, who are trying to build bridges instead of walls. Seek them out if you ever need support or community beyond what your human village can offer." "Thank you, Uncle," Isla said, embracing him tightly. "Thank you for coming to find me, for standing up for me, for showing me that I am not completely cut off from my people." "You will always be Ironhide blood," Grack said firmly. "No exile can change that. Your mother would be proud of the woman you have become, of the courage you have shown and the love you have found. Never forget that." With that, he shouldered his pack and set off down the road, his large form gradually disappearing into the distance. Isla stood watching long after he was gone, Isaac's arm warm around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" Isaac asked quietly. "I am better than all right," Isla said, leaning into his embrace. "I feel like I have been given a gift, the knowledge that I am not completely alone, that there are others who understand what I have sacrificed and why. It makes everything feel less impossible." As spring arrived in earnest, and the farm burst into life with new growth and renewed activity, Isla found herself thinking often about what her uncle had said about communities, where humans and orcs lived together peacefully. She wondered if someday she and Isaac might visit one of those places, might see for themselves that their relationship was not an isolated miracle, but part of a larger movement toward understanding and coexistence. But for now, she was content with the life they had built here, on this small farm on the edge of human territory. They worked together through the spring planting, their hands side by side in the earth, their bodies moving in a rhythm that had become as natural as breathing. They celebrated the first green shoots breaking through the soil, the arrival of new calves in the barn, the way the world seemed to wake up and stretch after its long winter sleep. In late spring, as the days grew longer and warmer, Isla realized that she had missed 2 monthly cycles. At first, she tried to tell herself it was nothing, that the stress of the winter and the hard work of spring planting had simply disrupted her body's natural rhythms. But deep down, she knew. She knew with a certainty that made her heart race and her hands tremble. She waited until evening, until they had finished dinner and were sitting together on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Isaac had his arm around her shoulders, and she was leaning against him, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "Isaac," she said softly, and he looked down at her with a smile. "Yes, love." Isla took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I think I am pregnant." She felt him go completely still, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "You think?" he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have missed 2 cycles," Isla explained, turning to look up at him. "And I have been feeling tired and slightly nauseous in the mornings. I know it is early and I could be wrong, but I think we are going to have a baby, Isaac." For a long moment, he simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile began to spread across his face, growing wider and wider until he was grinning so hard it looked almost painful. "We are going to have a baby," he repeated, wonder clear in his voice. "Isla, we are going to have a baby." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, and she felt the trembling in his body that told her he was crying. "I am so happy," he whispered into her hair. "I am so incredibly happy. Thank you, Isla. Thank you for this gift, for choosing me, for building this life with me." Isla was crying too now, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "I love you," she said, the words feeling inadequate to express the depth of emotion she felt. "I love you so much, Isaac. And I am going to love our child with every fiber of my being." They sat there on the porch as the sun finished setting and the stars began to emerge, holding each other and talking in hushed, excited voices about the future. They talked about names and whether they hoped for a boy or a girl. They talked about how they would need to expand the house to make room for a nursery. They talked about what kind of parents they wanted to be, what values they wanted to instill, how they would protect their child from the prejudice they would inevitably face. "Our child will be strong," Isla said with fierce conviction. "Strong enough to face whatever the world throws at them, because they will have us, Isaac. They will have parents who love them and believe in them and will fight for them every single day." "They will have the best mother in the world," Isaac said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "And I will do my best to be the father they deserve. I will teach them everything I know about farming and reading and standing up for what is right. And you will teach them about courage and resilience and the importance of questioning traditions that no longer serve us." As the weeks passed and Isla's pregnancy became more obvious, the news began to spread through the village. The reactions were mixed, as everything involving their marriage seemed to be. Some people were genuinely happy for them, offering congratulations and gifts of baby clothes or blankets. Others were horrified, muttering about the abomination of a half-orc child and predicting that the baby would be born a monster. Isla tried not to let the negative reactions bother her, but Isaac could tell when she was upset, when some cruel comment had cut deeper than she wanted to admit. He made a point of being extra attentive on those days, of reminding her how loved and valued she was, of placing his hand on her growing belly, and talking to their unborn child about how excited he was to meet them. Mistress Vale remained a staunch supporter, scolding anyone who spoke negatively about the pregnancy in her hearing. "That baby is going to be blessed," she said loudly one market day when someone made a snide comment within her earshot. "Blessed with a mother who is braver than any of us, and a father who knows the true meaning of love and commitment. I only hope the rest of us are wise enough to see that." As summer arrived and Isla's belly swelled with their growing child, she found that her body changed in ways she had not expected. She tired more easily, needed to rest more often, and sometimes experienced odd cravings for foods she had never particularly liked before. Isaac was endlessly patient with her, taking on extra work without complaint, fetching her strange combinations of foods at odd hours and rubbing her sore feet every evening. "You are going to spoil me," Isla said one night as Isaac massaged her aching back. "Good," Isaac replied cheerfully. "You are growing a whole new person inside you, Isla. The least I can do is make sure you are comfortable and happy while you do it." In late summer, as Isla entered her final months of pregnancy, an unexpected visitor arrived at the farm. It was a young orc woman, perhaps 19 or 20, with the traditional green skin and small tusks, but with eyes that held a wariness Isla recognized all too well. "Please," the young woman said in heavily accented common speech when Isaac answered the door. "I am looking for Isla. I was told she lives here. I need to speak with her." Isla appeared behind Isaac, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "I am Isla," she said in the orc tongue. "Who are you and how did you find me?" The young woman's face flooded with relief. "My name is Kira," she said, also switching to the orc tongue. "Grak Ironhide told me about you when I met him in a border settlement. He said you had married a human, that you had found happiness despite your exile. I wanted to meet you to see if what he said was true." "Why?" Isla asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. Kira's eyes filled with tears. "Because I am in the same situation you were," she said quietly. "I fell in love with a human man, a trader who comes to the border territories. My clan found out, and they have threatened to exile me if I continue the relationship. But I cannot give him up, Isla. I cannot go back to pretending that love between our peoples is impossible or wrong. So I have run away, and I am trying to find him, trying to find a way to build a life together despite everything working against us." Isla's heart ached for the young woman, remembering all too well the pain and fear of being cast out from everything familiar. Without hesitation, she reached out and took Kira's hand. "Come inside," she said firmly. "You are welcome here, and we will help you however we can." What followed were several days of Kira staying with them, telling her story and learning about Isla and Isaac's life together. Isaac, once the situation was explained to him, was as welcoming and supportive as Isla had known he would be. He helped Kira locate the trader she loved, a kind man named Marcus, who was overjoyed to be reunited with her. Isla and Isaac stood as witnesses when Kira and Marcus spoke their own vows to each other in a small private ceremony in the farmhouse. It was not legal or recognized by any authority, but it was real and binding to the two people who spoke them, and that was what mattered. Before Kira and Marcus left to start their own life together in one of the border settlements, Kira embraced Isla tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for showing me that this is possible, that love can survive even when the whole world seems determined to destroy it. I will never forget your kindness. Be happy," Isla told her, "and be brave. The path you are choosing will not be easy, but if you have each other, if you hold fast to the love you share, you can survive anything." As autumn arrived again, marking a full year since that night Isla had gone to Isaac's room and demanded to finally be his wife in truth, Isla felt the first pains of labor begin. Isaac, who had been anxiously preparing for this moment for months, immediately sprang into action, sending for the midwife and making sure Isla was comfortable. The labor was long and difficult, as first births often were, and there were moments when Isla wondered if she had the strength to continue. But Isaac never left her side, holding her hand and wiping her forehead and telling her how strong she was, how proud he was of her, how much he loved her. Finally, as dawn was breaking over the farm, their child was born. The midwife, a practical woman who had agreed to help despite her reservations about delivering a half-orc baby, cleaned the infant and wrapped it in a soft blanket before handing it to Isla. "You have a daughter," she said, and Isla could hear the surprise in her voice. "And she is, well, she is beautiful." Isla looked down at her daughter and felt her heart overflow with love. The baby had green-tinted skin, though lighter than Isla's own, and tiny tusks that were barely visible. Her eyes, when she opened them, were a striking golden brown that seemed to be a perfect blend of Isla's amber and Isaac's brown. She had a dusting of dark hair and the pointed ears that marked her orc heritage. "She is perfect," Isla whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She is absolutely perfect." Isaac, who had been hovering anxiously, finally moved close enough to see his daughter properly. Isla watched his face as he looked at their child for the first time, saw the wonder and love and fierce protectiveness that flooded his expression. "She is perfect," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "She looks like you, Isla. She has your strength and your beauty." "She looks like both of us," Isla corrected gently. "She is the perfect blend of human and orc, proof that our two peoples can create something beautiful together." They named her Elara, a name that meant hope in the common tongue, because that was exactly what she represented to them. Hope for a better future, hope for understanding between their peoples, hope that love could truly conquer the divisions that had caused so much pain. The first few weeks with a newborn were exhausting and overwhelming, but also filled with moments of transcendent joy. Isla marveled at every tiny sound Elara made, every expression that crossed her small face. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, taking on even more of the household tasks so Isla could rest and recover from the birth, and spending hours simply holding his daughter and staring at her in wonder. When they finally felt ready to bring Elara to the village, the reactions were much as they had expected. Some people cooed over the baby and exclaimed over how adorable she was. Others recoiled or made cruel comments about the child being a monster or an abomination. Isla held her head high and ignored the negativity, focusing instead on the people who chose kindness over hatred. Mistress Vale was particularly enchanted with Elara, insisting on holding her and pronouncing her the most beautiful baby she had ever seen. "She is going to break hearts when she grows up," the cheesemaker predicted. "Both human and orc hearts, I would wager, and she is going to make this world a better place simply by existing in it." As the months passed, and Elara grew from a tiny infant into a curious, active baby, Isla and Isaac settled into their new reality as parents. It was not always easy, especially when they faced prejudice or discrimination because of their daughter's mixed heritage. But they held fast to each other and to their love, and they made sure that Elara grew up knowing she was cherished exactly as she was. On the anniversary of that night when Isla had gone to Isaac's room and declared that she had waited long enough to be his wife, they celebrated quietly at home. Elara was asleep in her cradle, and Isla and Isaac sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Isaac asked softly. "Marrying me, giving up any chance of reconciliation with your clan, facing the prejudice and difficulty that comes with being in a mixed-species marriage." Isla turned to look at him, taking in his familiar features that she had come to love so deeply. "Not for a single moment," she said firmly. You and Elara are my family now, Isaac. You are my home, and I would choose this life with all its challenges and imperfections over any alternative. Isaac smiled and pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. I feel the same way, he said. You came into my life like a force of nature, refusing to accept the barriers I tried to put up, demanding to be loved properly. And I will be grateful for that courage for the rest of my days. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Isla spoke again. I have been thinking, she said, about what my uncle said, about the communities where humans and orcs live together peacefully, about Kira and Marcus building their life in the border territories. Do you think, perhaps when Elara is older, we might visit one of those places? So she can see that she is not alone, that there are other children like her. I think that is a wonderful idea, Isaac agreed. And who knows? Maybe someday there will be enough mixed families that we can form our own community, a place where humans and orcs are truly equal and children of both races grow up together without prejudice. That would be a dream worth working toward, Isla said wistfully. Then we will work toward it, Isaac said with determination. One day, one choice, one act of love at a time. We cannot change the whole world, Isla, but we can change our little corner of it. We can raise Elara to be kind and strong and proud of her heritage, both human and orc. We can show our neighbors through our actions that love between our peoples is not only possible but beautiful. And maybe, just maybe, we can inspire others to make the same choice we did, to choose love over fear. Isla rested her head on his shoulder, feeling utterly content. They had come so far from that night a year ago when she had stood in his doorway and told him she would not wait any longer to be his wife. They had faced challenges and prejudice and pain, but they had also found joy and love and purpose. And as she sat there on the porch with her husband, listening to their daughter's soft breathing from inside the house, Isla knew with absolute certainty that every struggle had been worth it. She had found her home, not in a place, but in the family she had built with Isaac. She had found her purpose, not in following the traditions of her clan, but in creating new traditions based on love and acceptance. She had waited long enough to be Isaac's wife in truth, and now she was living the life she had fought so hard to claim. And it was more beautiful than anything she could have imagined.